A terror attack was thwarted in the U.S. this week. The Daily Beast reports, the FBI has arrested a man who allegedly intended to commit an attack, quote, in the spirit of Dylan Roof. Benjamin McDowell, a 29-year-old from Florida, reportedly purchased a gun from an undercover FBI agent with whom he had been consulting in advance of the planned attack. McDowell was arrested on Wednesday. He had established connections with a white supremacy group while in prison in South Carolina, and he had tattoos supporting the group. They continue, McDowell told the undercover agent that, I have the heart to do it. I got the heart to do that shit, but I don't have the good training. Though his plan was unclear, McDowell told the agent he was looking for a way to conduct an attack on non-whites without getting caught. He posted on Facebook at one point linking to a synagogue in Myrtle Beach. So, it's unclear whether he was going to massacre black people like Dylan Roof or if he was going to go after Jews in Myrtle Beach or whatever the case is. But the FBI has thwarted this attack, and this guy was the real deal. This guy was serious, according to everything that they're saying. And again, this is another example, unfortunately, of this is getting very little coverage. Like I always tell you guys, I go to a whole bunch of sites when I'm prepping for the show. It's like 15 to 20 different sites. I only saw this on like 3 or 4 of them. Now, again, for a second, let's think about if it was a Muslim planning the same kind of an attack in the U.S. It would be the biggest story. It would be on every single one of those sites, and Donald Trump and the right would, use it as evidence of their claims that, Muslims are the worst, full stop. But that's the thing, is they have a giant confirmation bias. Whenever it's, a story that fits their narrative, we'll talk about that one. But whenever it's one that doesn't fit their narrative, don't even discuss it. So now people might try to say, well, you do the same thing or the left does the same thing. That's simply not true. Go through my YouTube archive and you'll see the countless jihadist terror attacks or thwarted terror attacks that I discussed. I literally the last story I discussed was a jihadist terror attack in Pakistan and Iraq. So I cover it no matter what because I go wherever the facts lead me because that's my job. But what you find oftentimes on the right is, and not just the right, honestly, in just mainstream media, is, well, you know what it is? They just casually dismiss it as a lone wolf, an exception that proves the rule that right-wingers in general and whites in general, of course they're not fucking violent. This is an anomaly, so why are we talking about it? Whereas when it's a Muslim and it's a jihadist, they think, wow, this is part of a bigger sensationalistic worldwide plot where everything is linked, an attack in Pakistan, an attack in Iraq, Lebanon, France, Canada, the US. It's all part of this giant thing. But if there's a right-wing attack planned in France or Germany, and there's been a rise in the far right there, and in Greece they have the Golden Dawn Party, it's a fucking neo-Nazi party, don't worry about it. Here in the U.S., there's right-wing attacks that are planned and foiled, and sometimes they happen, and doesn't fit the narrative, shut the fuck up. And again, it's not nefarious. It's just, when they see a right-wing attack, it's just a yawn, because it's like, well, that's an anomaly, and it's a one-off thing, and whatever. But look, there are numbers on this. There are statistics on this, and it is true that as a raw number, there are more right-wing attacks and attempted attacks in the U.S. than Muslim attacks. Now, understand, that's a little bit misleading, because it is true that Muslims in the U.S. are only 1% of the population. So certainly, they have an overrepresentation for their group. But isn't it still interesting that that's a number that, like, I don't think most people know that you're way more likely to die in just run-of-the-mill gun violence. Over 30,000 gun deaths a year in the U.S., over 10,000 of them are homicides, so you're way more likely to die from that. But even when you talk about terrorism specifically, yeah, as a raw number, I think the number post 9/11 until about 2012, there was a study from the Department of Homeland Security, which found that I think 56% of the terror attacks in the U.S. were right-wing terror attacks. So, look, I'm not saying we should only focus on the right-wing terror attacks and only hype that up and use hysteria and, oh my God, this is crazy, and ignore the Muslim terror attacks. I'm saying cover it all and be objective and rational about it. But that's not the case. Like I said, This was only news on a few of the sites that I go to, and I go to all these different sites to prep for the show. But if it was a Muslim, I think we all know it would have been fucking everywhere. So, and no, by the way, this is not evidence to let's scapegoat all right-wingers. Let's fucking, do profiling of right-wingers or young white men. Look, people can make that argument. Hey, 63% of mass shootings are done by white males. So, sorry, but Kyle, when you walk into a mall or when you walk into a movie theater, we're going to have to give you extra scrutiny. I think that's stupid, and I think that's stupid because it's still the case that the overwhelming majority of white males are not going to fucking do a mass shooting. Duh! So, but then that same logic applies to Muslims too. Even if you say worldwide, which is true, Muslims do more religious terrorism than any other group. Again, that's worldwide. I'm not talking the U.S. now. Worldwide, there's more religious terrorism in the name of Islam than any other group. That's true. But it's also true that the overwhelming majority of Muslims are not terrorists and are never going to ever do a terrorist attack. So to do the let's profile all of them is just as stupid as taking this story and saying, let's profile all right-wingers. So, but there you have it. The FBI did a fine job stopping a terror attack. And this is a very rare time you'll hear me give credit in this way, in a sincere way, but credit to the FBI. Thank you, FBI.